All right, the U.S. Supreme Court is set to hand down a highly anticipated ruling. We know it's coming tomorrow, and we have folks that are impacted by this that are going to be giving us exclusive reaction right after that ruling comes down on Tuesday morning. And this has to do with states' bans targeting transgender athletes. And the decision likely coming in here originates from two cases, one in Idaho and one in West Virginia. There was a case from Washington State that the High Court decided not to take that one. They took these other two states' appeals, basically, of saying, why are biological boys allowed to compete against girls? This is a Title IX violation. That's the crux of the issue. But again, it has a great impact here in the state of Washington. Of course, we have an initiative coming to the ballot this fall dealing with this very issue. So this is what's coming down on Tuesday morning. 7 a.m. Washington time is when these cases come down. And so we'll be able, certainly in tomorrow's episode of Washington in Focus Daily, to have a thorough scope of reaction to this ruling that's coming down. I would say for this period of rulings coming down, other than, voting rights, there have been a couple of there were some gun rights cases that came out last week that were highly anticipated, but it's probably not, I shouldn't be a secret that the last day of rulings that come out from the nation's high court are usually the ones that are most controversial and perhaps have divided the 9 justices on the court. It will be very interesting to see how this comes out on Tuesday morning. And we also got word today from the state Supreme Court that they have agreed and granted cert. And that means, in other words, they've agreed to take arguments in a case called International Partners for Ethical Care Incorporated versus Ferguson. Of course, that's Governor Bob Ferguson. And this case challenges a Washington state law that actually allows state run shelters to hide minors from their parents. Seems pretty far fetched, but this is actually what's been happening. This means that, say, a young person goes to school and talks with their counselor and they are undergoing some gender confusion. And they say, I can't share this with my parents. They will object and they would allow me to proceed with gender affirming medical care. Well, in the state of Washington and some other states, the school is then allowed to basically turn that child over. Then that child can be placed in a home, a foster parent, a shelter care for 90 days at a time, and they can actually start to receive medical care. And not only is the parent of this minor child not allowed to know what kind of gender affirming care their child is undergoing, they don't even get to know where their child is located. Basically, some people have likened it to kidnapping. And that is what has happened. And my colleague Andrew Rice, who covered the U.S. Supreme Court, or covers the U.S. Supreme Court, I should say, today wrote up an article in the Washington state case. And he explained the issues at play here in the arguments the court will consider. He said the High Court will examine 3 laws challenged in the suit, one permitting minors who are at least 13 years old, that seems young, to receive outpatient treatment without parental consent. Another law requires overnight shelters to reach out to the state instead of parents if a child runs away to seek protected health care, including gender affirming care. And the third law allows children to stay in shelters for up to 90 days. Now, it will likely be this fall or possibly early 2027 when the U.S. Supreme Court takes up these arguments, and then it would be likely a year from now, late June of 2027, before we get a decision. But I want to share with you that I heard a heartbreaking case of a family directly impacted by this here in the state of Washington. That was during the legislative session. Back on February 3rd, Republicans held a couple of listening sessions for the 2 initiatives that we're going to be voting on this fall, the 2 thus far certified for the fall ballot. And those have to do with the restoration of parental rights and transgender athletes in girls' sports. And there was a woman who came forward to testify in a hearing, and it was absolutely heartbreaking. She hadn't seen her daughter at that point for many, many months. I think it's been well over a year now because her daughter, who already had some mental health issues, when they came to a school district here in Washington and enrolled, her daughter spoke with staff, or I don't, it might have been a school counselor, administrators at the school, who then help facilitate her to go to a judge to say then the judge basically says, you parents don't go along with what your daughter wants to do with her gender affirming medical care, so your rights are at least temporarily terminated. We're going to place her in shelter care. You don't get to know what's happening to her body and where she's being placed. Now, mind you, in the state of Washington, there are a number of shelters, foster care facilities that fully embrace this gender affirming care ideology. And those are the places that are taking these kids temporarily. So it was heartbreaking to hear from this mother, desperate to find out where her daughter was located, and the state saying, we're protecting her. So this case is again going to be heard now, probably this fall or early next year by the US Supreme Court.